Hey, this is Ernest Miller, the cat, baby. If you ain't watching me with Mike and Tyler count it out, you losing, you missing out on big time.
You are listening to Count It Out with Mike and Tyler.
Well, we are live, pals, and welcome to another edition of the Bill Apter Seal of Approve Count It Out with Mike and Tyler. My name is Tyler, and I am joined, as always, by Mike. But Mike, it's not just you and I again. We want to get right down to business. We are going to get to part two of our Sick Boy interview. I love this conversation last week, and Mike, I'm sure that you're excited for part two to share with everybody.
There's nothing left to say. This guy has just so much to give, way more than I ever expected. I was expecting a fun conversation, but he just knocked it out of the park. He wouldn't shut up with the amazing stories. He was amazing. Thank you so much to Scott Vick, Sick Boy, for being part of the show. I hope you guys enjoy this. This is part two of Sick Boy. Go for it. I like that. Talking about Bill makes me think of a question that I can't believe I've never asked anybody on this show before. And you're the perfect guy to ask with your history in football. What is it about football players that makes such an easy transition to professional wrestling? Because you can throw a dart and hit a wrestler that has history in, be it the CFL, the NFL, or even college football. What is it about football players that just wrestling is there for them?
I don't know. I think obviously I think a lot of guys. I mean, this is for me. I can't speak for everybody, but obviously growing up, I was enthralled with obviously football, and then you get these bigger than life guys like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Conan the Barbarian is one of my favorite all time movies. It's probably number one for me.
Yeah.
And I think it's a certain mindset, where you go in and it's like, I wanted to be Arnold Schwarzenegger and look like that. And then once I started working out, and I was like, I don't have the genetics for that. But you still kind of strive for that. And I think the competition, the drive, and the athletic ability. And what's crazy is it's not always easy for a lot of guys. I think there's a draw there, but there's been a lot of guys that have tried to cross over, and it's been hard for them to do.
100%. Do you when you look back when I look back at this time in WCW, I feel like the flock kind of got the rug pulled out from underneath them. I feel like that there could have been more that the company could have got out of the flock. Do you have the same feelings about that? Was there any creative ideas that were pitched that never happened? Like it just kind of seems like it ended pretty abruptly after that Saturn angle.
It did. I completely agree with you. I think the rug got pulled from underneath us with no real explanation. And I still now think about it. I'm like, we were right there below NWO as far as like just being over. Now,
Yes.
I mean, obviously NWO had a lot more, when you talk about an entity and having individual guys, they had more successful individual guys than we did because it's pretty much Raven and Saturn. But it's crazy because we had kind of heard the word was they wanted to build up the flock to take on the NWO because we were the only real faction in WCW because Four Horsemen had splintered off, and I think it was just the flock and NWO until they splintered in a Wolf Pack, and then I think they did Latino World Order.
Mm-hmm.
But prior to that, it was really just NWO and Flock, and I just don't think they built us up enough underneath in terms of myself, Scotty Riggs, Kidman, Hammer, all of us, Reese, the whole group. I just don't think they built us up enough to have enough. I mean, if I was NWO, I go, why am I going to go against the Flock?
Yeah.
I mean, besides Perry having the TV title, I don't think Perry was United States champion ever.
No.
He had the world TV title, and Rave had the US title for a bit. But other than that, none of us did anything.
Like I remember they had Reese job to Hoovy at the pay-per-view, and that was like Reese is a monster, and Hoovy's a great wrestler, but you look at that on paper and you go, that could have been a big win for the flock there, right?
Yeah, but I think there was other things in play on that because that's when they were getting a lot of those luchador guys to take off their mask.
Mm.
And in order to do so, it was a lot of trade-off. And I think Ron was in the wake of that in terms of having to appease those guys and give them something, to put a little sugar on the plate to make it a little more enticing for them to go, okay, I'm gonna take off my mask because that's a big deal for those guys.
Yeah.
They didn't do that. I mean, I know for sure with Hoovy, part of it was like when I worked Juventud in a match, part of that rub was having Bill come down to save him. Because I had the match, and I think Horace came in and interfered, and we started double teaming, and then Ron came in, and then that's when Goldberg showed up to save Juventud. And I knew all that was a part of that whole unmasking of a lot of those luchador guys, because I think Mysterio was one of the last guys to do it, that was really holding on to it. But yeah, I think that was an unfortunate side effect of of that to really stroke those guys to get, to go, okay, I'll unmask. You're going to let me beat a 7 foot, 400-pound guy. Which I'm like, it makes no sense to me, but who am I? There are people a lot smarter than I am in that business, apparently.
If we're going to talk about poorly thought out creative decisions, I need to know what it was like now that we're past this boom period. WWE's back on top. Things are starting to change. What's it like backstage when all of a sudden the book is going through a rotating door of bookers? You have Kevin Nash taking it for a while. Who knows where Eric Bischoff is? Vince Russo's with the company doing Vince Russo things. There's a panic backstage now. Can you explain your part of this and how you were feeling during this era of WCW?
Sure. I mean, for me, I never experienced the Russo part of it. I was right on the tail end of him being there.
Okay.
I was really more through that change of booking going to from Kevin Sullivan and Eric doing a lot of it. Now Eric still had a lot of control, but from Nash really taking over from Kevin Sullivan.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I can really speak on. And to me, where things really started, the wheels started coming off the bus was once I think that tidal wave of NWO kind of started that tsunami. It was just a tsunami. I mean, let's face it, Hogan turning heel, whoever would have thought?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was huge. And then Hall and Nash, for the longest time, you didn't know what they were doing. Everybody was like, are they part of WWF? And this is a true invasion. And it was so big. It's like once that kind of crashed, I don't think they knew what to do.
Right.
And now it came down to creative. And, I think they were just, it's almost like they were just like, oh, let's throw this up on the wall and see if it sticks, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I couldn't understand it. I mean, there were things that I'm just like, it was so frustrating in the back. Like you said, when we were hot and running, it didn't matter. But when it kind of boiled down to that, and you got down now to the nitty gritty of having to book things that make sense and have matches that make sense, I never understood it. Like I remember having a conversation with Goldberg actually, and I was like, dude, at some point, you need to fall from the pedestal. And where do you go? They built you and built you and built you. Now you need to get beat down like Rocky in Rocky 3.
Mm-hmm.
And it needs to be somebody like a Scott Norton, somebody physical. I would say the Giant, but they pimped the Giant out too. I mean, my gosh, he took what was the suplex Kurt Hennig did? The leg lock,
the
Perfect.
fisherman
finish.
buster, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, which, and nothing against Kurt, but this is the Giant.
Yeah, a little
Like, I mean,
protection,
very
right?
seldom should he be taken off of his feet. That was one of the big draws with Andre, you know? But it's like, so it's like you're going to have to find somebody. And I was like, Bill, you need somebody to just destroy you, where you were like beaten to where you're about to die and you're busted up in the hospital. You don't want to wrestle anymore, you know? And then you had this big comeback, you know, and this is the eye of the tiger thing, you know?
Yeah.
Come back. And then, I mean, but of course it just, and I mentioned to a couple other people, and again, I get who I am and where my status is and in the business, in the company, but I was just like, you know, thinking in terms of like, I don't know, I'm always thinking like that kind of stuff. What can we do that's really cool? And in my mind, just as a fan, it's like, that's what I would want to see.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I would want to see, like, you know, because where else can you go with Bill from there? You know,
Right.
he was so up there with that undefeated streak, and then they just had him lose to Nash.
Yeah.
I don't
That's
nowhere. And I thought that just made no sense whatsoever to me. If you're going to do it, have somebody just literally beat the crap out of him. And he's just busted up, busted neck, whatever you want to, however you want to write it and sell it. So it was like anytime you would try to go and pitch something, not that I went and pitched that, but just in telling him and talking to a few other people. And then as it really relates to me, just there was no direction with anything. Like when the Flot split, they were like, they didn't have any ideas for me. They just said, oh, you're going to be off TV for 90 days. Come up with a character. So yeah, morale really started going down. That's when it started going down for me. The writing was on the wall for me. I was like, I got to get out of here. Like, this is not looking good. It's so, you know, like I had been off of TV. My 90 days turned into just under a year. And they would fly me out because they liked the character that I came up with, and they would fly me out to do vignettes and videos for it. And it was either they forgot or we don't have enough time to do it. And I turned around and fly back home the same day.
Mm-hmm.
And that went on for like probably like 3 months out of what turned into like being a year. And so it just progressed into me working a match with Rick Fuller, and Jimmy Hart had taken over, had supposedly taken over the young, being over the young talent. What they wanted to do was let WCW Saturday Night be like the grounds for young talent, and that's where we develop the young talent, and then leave the live shows to the vets.
Yeah.
And so Jimmy was like, when I was coming back, and you know, he was handling it because I felt bad for Jimmy because I just thought he's in a bad spot because he was the guy I was going through on all this, and I'd get out there and he goes, oh, we're not going to be able to do it today, sorry, and fly back home and all this. And then finally, I have a match, which my character hasn't debuted. We haven't done anything with it. I've been off TV for, I think it was like 10 months, 9 months, somewhere in there. And I'm going against Rick Fuller. And Rick Fuller had been off for like, I think 8 weeks or longer, something with a torn bicep. And they have me putting him over, which normally, I mean, I don't get caught up in who puts over who or this, that, and the other. But Jimmy was like, you need to go talk to Kevin and see if, you know, what's up with this. And Kevin's response was, well, they're going to know who you are when you walk out and expect you to win. And I'm like, I was just like, okay, thank you very much, and left. But in my mind, I'm going, I've been off of TV for 10 months.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Rick has been off of TV for X number. I think he was, you know, like I said, 8, 12 weeks, something like that. What sense does that make? Not only that, Rick had just been an enhancement guy with WCW. And I get, and that's what Jimmy was saying to me. Okay, if they're wanting to push him, they're wanting to push you, and you're going to run an angle, ask Kevin if they're going to run an angle. Is this a one and done kind of match? And I did. And the response I got was, as he was just lacing up his boots and didn't even look at me, was like, "Well, they're going to expect you to win when you walk out, and that's why he's going over." And I'm like, "Okay, thanks."
How
And,
how do you get to from WCW to the WWF then? Who opened those doors for you? What was the communication like? Who were you talking to when you signed your contract with them?
Terry Taylor. Uh, Terry was a big fan of my work in WCW and really pushed me to try to get more wins and put me in good positions on Thunders and Nitros. Um, and then so that he was my first contact, but I'd had a contact prior to that because, like I said earlier, we actually had contracts offered to us by WWF before WCW. So we had that connection with Bruce Pritchard, and then I'd heard um, from Lodi via the Hardy Boys, who said Jim Ross is a big fan of my work. And so I was like, that's when I really started kind of going like, I knew Bruce had said, "Hey, look, you guys will have a spot here. Go learn everything you can in WCW. When you want to come here, but that was 3 some odd years ago. So you don't know how, it still stand." So I reached out to Terry and I said, "Hey, if I'm done with WCW and I'm not here anymore, would I have a spot there?" And he goes, "Absolutely." So that was my end. And so then they flew me up to Stanford, and I met with Jim Ross and Bruce Pritchard, and we didn't talk anything about character or anything that they had ideas for me. We just negotiated a contract and flew back home to Atlanta. Well, that was like on a Friday, and the next day they FedEx me or actually faxed, if you can. I mean, that goes back a bit. Faxing stuff. Faxed me a contract and signed it, and that was my end to WWE.
What were the biggest differences for you from the WCW, the way it was run, to the WWE?
A lot. One off the bat, professionalism. Huge start difference. I mean, WCW was just a nightmare to a certain degree on trying to get flights changed. If you wanted to change a flight, if something came up, WWE was like, sure, you know. I mean, I would be that night, literally on a Monday night, and I was flying out on Wednesday and go, "Hey, Wednesday, instead of flying back to Atlanta, I need to fly to Savannah. We'll take care of it." WCW is like pulling teeth. "Well, this flight is booked for you to go from here to Atlanta. We can't, Um, and just the way the back was done, like WCW was like, you get done with your match, you're out of the building. And if you didn't have a match, you were gone. WWF, they wanted everybody there, whether you worked or not, to watch the entire match in the back and stay until the very end. They demanded a little more out of you, um, but you would get more in return, I think, and it was just that professional. And then too, from a athletic standpoint, the ring was bigger. That was harder. That was a big adjustment for me. Mm-hmm. And the style, WCW was a little slower. We would tell a little more of a story in terms of the match was a little slower pace. WCW or WWE had started doing that. Really, they were really a lot faster paced in their matches. And so when you go, because I think WCW was 16 by 18, something like that. I can't remember, but I think it was like a 2 foot difference. It doesn't sound a lot, but it really does. Like, I just remember like my timing. I knew that WCW ring like the back of my hand, where I needed to be, what I had to do. And when I went to WWE, it was like, it took me a while to get really comfortable. Plus the ropes, they had legit like nylon type rope, like, real rope, and WCW were cables. And there was like no give on them. So it's like you had a lot more spring. So you're coming off the ropes a lot faster. You had to get your footwork up under you. It was just different in those terms. The locker room was a lot better. I mean, I never had any issues with any of the boys in either locker room, but WWE just seemed to be a lot more upbeat, and you had more of a connection, even with some of the stars, like the guys that were up the top card guys like Rock. And I mean, to put it in perspective, I had been working dart matches with WWF for 6-8 months, and I dislocated my jaw, and I went down to MCW, Memphis Championship Wrestling, to get back in ring shape, and they wanted me to work on a character there. And so I'd been down there for, I don't think I'd been up to WWE TV for like 2 months. And my first show back, I'm on a flight, and we're waiting on the plane, and we're all sitting there, and my aisle seat's empty. And Rock comes on, and Rock sits down. He's in my seat. And I thought it was really cool because he asked me, hey, how I was doing, that, oh, no, you've been down in Memphis, and that's where I started, and was just asking questions and just talking and being friendly, and really like cared about what I was doing and what I was doing there. Well, Taz was a couple seats back on the other side, and he said something like, hey, Rock. And I thought this was like one of the coolest things. Rock goes, hey, excuse me 1 minute. And he turned around and he said, hey, I'll get with you in just a second. Let me finish up this conversation here, and turned back and said, I'm sorry. What were you saying?
Class.
And Rock was over at this time, like big, like, and I thought, that's really cool, because a lot of guys, me, I haven't done anything in the business. Even with WCW, I haven't done anything. I have done zero in WWE, WWE. And for him to be that cool, I thought that was really cool. And a lot of guys were like that. And that was a big difference. You really felt the separation in WCW with some of the top guys. Not to say, I'm not saying they're all jerks. It's just it was just a different dynamic, in terms of those guys. Like, I never felt like, my gosh, this is The Undertaker. This is Rock. This is Austin. This is, you felt it a little bit more in WCW.
While preparing for this interview, Tyler brought to my attention a rumor that I'd never heard of before, and it really, really made me laugh. And we have to ask you about it to see if there's any truth to it. While we're talking about developing your character, a rumor floating around is that they were going to have you come in with your real name, Scott Vick, and insert you into a story with Triple H and Kane as the brother of Katie Vick. Is there any truth was that ever discussed with you?
You might have to give me a few more details. I'm not familiar with that one. I've never heard of that.
I think that answers our question. Yeah. So this is probably the most notoriously bad storyline WWE has ever written. It was
no. Hold on. Let's take that back. That's in wrestling history.
Yeah.
I think in the history of wrestling, my friend. And I'm not saying that because I'm in on it. I just think it was because I don't want that to be my claim to any kind of real notoriety in wrestling. I'm attached to that, but I think it's just wrestling. I mean, there may be others that you don't know of, but in terms of ones that you know of, that's the worst.
Very true. That's a good claim. Yeah, I like that.
Well, you'll like this. I don't know how much of this you've heard or not, but I had no idea about this character. I didn't have a clue. I had been on and off with him for a year or so, like a couple years, and I want to say it had probably been like around like that again, almost like when I was entered in WCW, like 10, 11 months. I hadn't heard from them, and I just got kind of fed up with the business, and I was just like, okay, they've lied to me enough. And it wasn't them; it was Johnny Ace. It was Johnny Ace. He just lied to me on a lot of stuff, wanting to bring me back. And so we're going to do this with you. Want to tag you with Sean O'Hare, and we want to start how just. So there's been all this just turmoil in terms of what they're going to do and not do, and then they don't do it. And nothing came through, and I just was like, I'm done. And once again, like how Lance Ringo started, I was out to dinner with my brother and my family, And I get a call from Howard Finkel at like 8 o'clock on a Sunday. Can you be in Toronto for Nitro or Raw? And man, at this point I had started a fitness company. I was focused on that. My first son was born, so I was focused on that. I had pretty much just said, I'm done with wrestling. I'm burned out on it. I just need a break. I wasn't working out, wasn't training, nothing at all. And so I get that call, but I'm still like, well, I'm gonna go.
Right.
It's a payday. I'm gonna go. Plus, more than the payday, I can see the boys. I can see guys I haven't seen in a while. So, all right, let me back up a little bit. I would watch WWF or WWE every now and then, and I was seeing this storyline, and I'm going, why in the hell is my name with this Katie Vick girl? Like, it's just I couldn't grasp, I couldn't wrap my head around it. Going, why are they using my last name? Any name? Why my name? It just didn't make sense. And then when Howard called, I still didn't really it didn't connect. Like that was it. I was thinking it had something to do with the flock because there had been kind of rumors, guys I had been talking to about maybe doing like a flock thing because Raven was there, Saturn was still there, Kidman was there. Yeah. So there had kind of been a little bit of, I thought that was more the direction it's going in. And when I get there, of course, when I see Rave, I ask him about it because he's going to know. And he's like, no, I don't know, but I'll find out. And of course, he's like, yeah, no, that's dead in the water. So I'm like, why am I here? Like, and it still hadn't clicked on the Katie Vick thing until the office came up to me and said, hey, yeah, we want you to come and cut a video, a promo on this storyline with Katie Vick. Now, this is the first time I heard of anything, and they go, there's a pay-per-view match, and I don't know what pay-per-view it was, but they said it was like in 3 weeks with Kane and Hunter. And it had to do with this Katie Vick storyline. They were like, are you familiar with it? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. So they kind of gave me an outline. Basically, the outline was, hey, imagine this when you're doing this interview, when you're cutting this promo, that it's the Kennedys and Chappaquidda, where I can't remember which brother, but one of them or a cousin had the accident on the bridge, and the girl had died, and there was this.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, kind of thing. That's what was told to me. Like it was like, imagine like this Chappaquidda thing with the kid, which I was familiar with because that's like a big history buff. So I was like, I was familiar with that. And they were like, the gist is, your sister was the only person in high school that was friends with Kane. And, he was a monster and gruesome, disfigured and all this. And, they had this accident because that's what they said. It was the car accident and she died. But the real question was, did he take advantage of her while she was alive or dead? That's what they wanted me to push, the narrative. So I cut this little promo and did all that. And they're like, hey, you're going to interfere in that pay-per-view match. And I'm like, I haven't heard from you guys. Like, I'm thinking in my head, like, oh, this is great. But I haven't heard from you guys at all. I show up here, I'm like 250, 260 pounds out of shape because I hadn't been doing anything, like I said. And in like 3 weeks, this is how I'm going to run in on this match. And it didn't make sense to me at all. So they ended up, and I think I went to like 1 or 2 Raws after that, and then they finally were like, I think it was after that second Raw, they said, we're just ending this storyline. Like, there's not going to be, we're going to do the pay-per-view match, and then it's not going anywhere after that. So I'm like, I'm like sitting there going, okay, once again, rug's been pulled out from under me, just like it was with the flock kind of thing. And I'm just like, makes no sense. But it wasn't until later where I started, like at the time I didn't know, but then I'm hearing Bruce Pritchard doing interviews on the Katie Vick storyline, and he's going, well, they wanted to debut Scott Vick that way with the Katie Vick storyline, but he showed up and was like had a tryout match and was like out of shape and the match wasn't good and this, that, and the other. And so we killed that angle. And I'm going, bullshit. Like, don't use me as the scapegoat.
Right.
That storyline ended because it was a horrible storyline.
100%.
I just this, what I told you before, I hadn't heard from them in forever because guarantee you told me I'm going to debut. You give me 3 weeks, you give me 2 or 3 months, I'm going to be in tip top shape, So yeah, I had heard nothing up until that point about it. And then there was a Tommy Dreamer interview that Tommy did that I read later, like actually I think it was a year or so after Bruce Pritchard's, where it gets even juicier because Tommy was on, I guess, the creative team, or he had something to do in the office there during that time. And he said, yeah, Vince wanted to debut Scott Vick through the Katie Vick storyline, and Scott and Hunter were going to headline WrestleMania.
No.
Now that's Tommy Dreamer's words in an interview.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Now I read that, I'm even more infuriated.
Right.
I'm like, WrestleMania headline, WrestleMania, and Tommy said, "Yeah, we had to tell Vince that Scott wasn't with the company anymore. Like, I guess he didn't know." So it's all just a big mind erase for me. That whole storyline.
Sounds a little WCW-ish, with that type of
Right.
disorganization.
It's out of character. It's out of character for WWE because, especially with Vince, because Vince knew everything that was going on, and Vince had every bit of control over everything that was happening, character-wise, and who was doing what. So for him to not know I wasn't with the company anymore, that I'd been out that long, just that like none of it makes. I still can't put it together now.
Well, you've been fantastic with your time here, and I just have a couple more questions I'd love to ask you. But you mentioned something that I never knew about until you said it, and I'd really like to just kind of go back to that for a sec. But you said that there were some talks in the WWE about a possible flock reinvention or relooking at the flock. Was there any serious legs behind that, or was it just kind of people talking?
No, I think that was just kind of like boys talk. Like I had heard, like through the boys. There was nothing direct from WWE. It was just kind of through the boys. I think it's more just speculation because you kind of had the nucleus of the guys there. Most of them, especially the guys that started it. Because with obviously Saturn was there. And then me and Billy Kidman, I think, were the next 2 guys introduced. I mean, we were the first the first ones there, and then we added on, Riggs and then Hammer and Reese and Horace and Lodi. So I think with the roster, those guys being in the roster there, and then of course me flying back, like having them fly me back in there, it had just kind of been through the rumor mill with that, but there was no legs to it whatsoever.
A match that I've seen surface.
Legs were another capacity, and
I was going to say a match that I've seen circulating a lot right now, especially with this time of the year as we're recording this, is a match that you had with John Cena, prototype back in the day. I'm seeing this pop up a lot on YouTube. John's coming up to his retirement right now, and this is one of his really early matches that are in a WWE ring that we can find. What was your experience like being around John at that time?
From what I remember, good. I mean, obviously, I didn't know him when he was at the height, and I can't comment on that, and I don't know in terms because that can change. I've seen guys change with not even a fraction of his success. Guys get a couple TV matches under their belt. Next thing you know, they're, God's gift to humanity.
Yeah.
But no, I just remember that easy laying out the match with him, going through it. I had no idea. I did not think he would go on to do what he did at that time. It's kind of like Bill, you know. And I think the story goes, had he not come up with the whole rapping thing, they were looking that he was going to be let go, you know. And it's kind of like my gripe where I go, why didn't you just give me an opportunity? Give me a TV time, put me out there, give me something to do. Let me see if I can pull it off. It's like we came close with stuff and we had ideas and nobody ever pulled the trigger on it. And then the stuff they did come up with was just ridiculous, So it's like, to me in that business, it's like, if a guy is good enough to be able to, you can put him on TV work wise, my gosh, if you're going to give the cheer squad or whatever they were called a dance. And I mean, you got some guys out of that could work and went on, obviously, but it's like, give some stuff a chance. They gave that chance to John, because honestly, I don't know if I would have. I was never a big John Cena fan, even through the rap phase. Even to this day, his work, it's not as believable as a Randy Orton or even a Batista, or I can name a lot of other guys. But to me, he's got the stick in terms of he had the Hulk Hogan thing.
Yeah.
Like, now Hogan back in the day could work. If you watch like Hogan early, especially like some of the Japan stuff, Hogan could work. Yeah. And now I'm just really basing it off of when I saw him in WCW. And at that point, he didn't have to. But I remember watching him at Halloween Havoc, and we were ringside with his match in a cage with Piper, and he's punching him. He's just like, and I'm like, oh my gosh, he's making $5 million a year, creative control, all the money, and and I'm like, this is horrible. But it was his look, his charisma, and especially, those early years with WWE. Cena was really the same way. I think Cena was like really, really great on the mic, had the look, and I think that compensated. And he could go and work in the ring. I might be a nitpicky compared to some people watching, because there's certain things I look at, and, where I'm like, oh, that's just not, for me. I don't get it. But I do get it in terms of, hey, he was selling tickets and putting people's asses in the seat, and that's all that really matters. But yeah, it was a good match that I think we had, pretty solid, and it was easy, and he was easy to get along with and lay that match out.
Something I love that I saw you did over the last couple of years was we saw you and Lodi and Reese pop up on Talkin' Shopomania and do a very fun little bit with them.
Yeah.
What was that experience like for you? I'm a huge fan of Gallows and Anderson. I think they're hilarious. I love their podcast. I'm a big fan of their Talkin' Shopomania stuff. And I thought your guys' cameo was absolutely brilliant. How much fun was that for you to do?
Oh, thanks, man. That was awesome. They were pretty much like, we had carte blanche on what we wanted to do. And we didn't do a lot. I thought we were going to set it up to do more. Because I think Doc and Carl run like a wrestling deal, or no, Doc does out of Georgia. I think they have a promotion they do. I'm not sure, or they did at the time, because it was like we didn't have a match in that show. We just kind of did a run, and I think it was to set us up to kind of bring us in to do stuff, which we never did, which is fine. But it was cool to see Doc and those guys, because I had done stuff with Doc on Indies and stuff. I never knew him when he was, in WWE prior with what was he? Fetus?
Festus.
Festus.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really did. I really didn't meet him until after, I think right before Japan, or right after. I think it was right after Japan, and we started doing some indie stuff, and we did quite a few little indie things together, and kind of clicked off. And of course, Lodi hit me up about doing that, but. No, it was really cool. I mean, Lodi and I had done stuff prior to that, like tags and stuff on some indies. Hadn't seen Ron a lot. I think that was the first time in years and years I'd seen Ron. I do remember in that one of the cool things, because they, like I said, they just opened for us to do whatever we wanted. And I said, and they wanted to be very quirky and kind of fun. And I said, well, let's dress Ron up as the Mummy, because he came out as the Mummy
The Yeti,
or
yeah.
the Yeti, because he did the Yeti. And so we got a bunch of toilet paper and wrapped him up into that, and had him. And I said, we'll have this whole thing where it's like, you come out and you do the Yeti thing, and then we're like, oh wait, Ron, stop! Like, you're confused. This is the flock, not the Yeti. So say I love, like, to me, like that comedy and wrestling, to me, that's the comedy that I like.
Sure.
Some of it's too hokey for me, and maybe people think that's hokey. I don't know, but I thought it was kind of cool in terms of just being like, since he was a Yeti, and that was a pretty infamous character as well. To just do this whole, like, and that was Ron, kind of his persona, that it'd be cool to, like, oh wait, and it was great because I think we went to the ring and he still had like toilet paper hanging from him, which was pretty funny.
That's absolutely amazing. I'm so glad we got that story. And Scott, I could sit here and listen to you talk forever. I just took a look and realized that we've been going for an hour and a half. I want to be respectful of your time. So I'm going to ask you one final question. That's what I like to ask all of our guests when we bring this home. And we'll have to reach out and do a part two because I feel like we barely scratched the surface with you. But when you take a look back at everything that you've done throughout your career, everything aside the wrestling business, what are some personal moments for you that you look back on that just make you happy or make you smile to think back on?
I mean, obviously getting the flock gimmick and getting the sick boy character. I mean, that was the start, the platform for me. That that launched me and gave me an ability to put my abilities out there for people to see, and it led me to I think a big part of me going on and getting the a deal with WWE, even though I never did TV with them. Um, that was super awesome. Meeting a lot of the guys that I met, the boys. I mean, being on the road, locker room. It's almost like with football. I mean, as much as I miss like the football and the actual in ring wrestling, it's like hanging out with the boys, because it's like, when you do something like that, where there's football or wrestling, not everybody does it, and there's only a small percentage of the population that gets to do something like that, and they only and only those guys know everything that you go through on the road, wrestling every night, travel, football, same thing, just the work, the blood, sweat, and tears that you put in it. Those guys relate. Those guys are like your brothers, and having that, that bond of going out and hanging out and pulling ribs on each other and having those moments. And they're there for the good and the bad, and they hear everything. And it's like people have always talked about. It's like, you spend more time with them than you do your family. And in a lot of ways, you go to them with certain things that's going on at home or, personally. So it's like that was a really cool aspect of the business for me, and things that really stick out in my mind. And then getting to work some of the big angles that I worked, like having that opportunity with Chris. I mean, just having Chris after that match going, I'll work with him anytime, anywhere. And he really pushed to try to get us to do an angle together. But of course, he was like here and I was down here, and they were wanting to do more with him. And I just didn't have enough clout at the time to make it, worthy to do anything with him. And then even small stuff that people don't know, like working with like Booker T. We worked a few house shows together, and I'd love to have done something with Booker because I think the matches we flowed really well together. We had a good just a good connection, and he was so easy to work with. And those were things that's like that's what makes it fun. There were guys where you're like, it's hard to work with sometimes because it's like pulling teeth working with them, when you get that guy that just knows where to be and has got his timing, and I guess that's what separates a lot of other guys, that rise to the top, ones that don't, even some that rise to the top can still be hard to work with. And you still get those guys where it's just super smooth, super easy, and it's like you look forward to like, oh man, we're gonna go work tonight, and you have a good match, and so yeah, I think working with those guys and having those relationships and having those surprise matches where you're like, man, I wasn't really looking forward to working tonight, but this ended up, it was like, really awesome. And getting to travel the world and the country, it was just a big bonus, something that was awesome that the business gave. And then obviously living the lifestyle that you're able to live and have the life that I was able to have doing that was pretty awesome.
That's amazing, man. And the work that you guys did, the legacy of the flock lives on. Here we are all these years
Absolutely.
later. All the fans have nothing but love for the flock. The WWE just put out a whole video with the whole history of the flock on their Vault channel. So thank you very much for all the amazing work you've done. Like the flock lives on, and it's one of the most popular factions and one of those big what if stories, because I think we could have got a lot more out of it, right?
Yeah, I think it doesn't get enough. I think there should be a little more out there. Each guy has their own little, part of the story, especially after the flock. I mean, Kevin was probably, and Perry were the most successful to go on after the flock. So yeah, I think there was things that could have been done a little bit different with the flock, but it's great that you still have that and it could live on. It unfortunately didn't go and wasn't bigger than what it was.
Well, it's big enough because I'll tell you, when we're not doing interviews, we're primarily a list formatted show. We do top 7 lists every week when we're not talking to somebody like yourself. And correct me if I'm wrong, Tyler, but I want to say the very first list we ever did on this show was the top 7 factions of all time in professional wrestling. And I promise you, we talked about the flock that day on our very first show as one of the greatest factions in wrestling history.
Oh,
so the legacy lives on. I can tell you that much.
Well, that's really cool. I just a little insight into it real quick. I think one thing that probably hurt it, I think Eric Bischoff heard it. In terms of the plot being any bigger than it was, because and I'm not saying this, he's admitted it on multiple interviews or interviews he's done about Raven, and of course anything that has to do with Raven was the plot.
Sure.
And he, for one, never understood the character. Like he was like, I don't get it. It just didn't make sense to him. And I get that's his perspective. But you have to look at the crowd reaction, okay? Like that statement would have some validity to it had we gone out there and when we show up and on a match and come into an arena and the arena's silent. But that wasn't the case. Anytime we showed up anywhere, I mean, the whole arena would turn and start booing us. And we would come down and we had good heat, and it's like, you don't have to get the character. Like, now this is just my point of view. If I'm running a wrestling business, I don't necessarily have to get the character. I think that's one of the things that's wrong with wrestling. Like we were saying at the beginning of this interview, where you have factions, where you have certain guys that are Heyman guys, Triple H guys, Michael Hayes guys, Eric Bischoff guys, and so forth and so on. You need to put all that aside and just look at it and go, hey, I don't have to necessarily get this, but guess what? The people are getting it. It's getting over. That's what you have to understand. You need to be in touch with the people, not the character.
Agreed.
And I mean, to a certain degree, he's the shot caller, and it's got to go through him first to get the approval and the thumbs up to go, I'm going to put it on TV and push it. But when you do that, and then you get the kind of response that we had, and listen, we got that response with none of us winning. Besides Raven and Saturn, the rest of us were job guys. I mean, that's the truth of it. We were job guys. and we were enhancement guys in terms of enhancing others, but also enhancing Raven at the same time. And I've got no problem with it. I understand why I was there, and I knew it was all about Raven. And that's the gig. I get it. But when you're seeing that we're this over, maybe start building us a little more. And I get if some guys maybe aren't up to the standard in terms of ring skills and things, but there was enough of us that we were. That, you know, and I've heard people talk stuff and they're like, oh, Sick Boy this, or he didn't do this, or he didn't do that. And I'm like, look, man, until you wrestled in that ring, don't say a word. And not only that, I didn't have 10, 15 years of experience like a lot of guys did. I didn't have the territories where I get to go and learn the do's and the don'ts and, you know, how to perfect a character and how to perfect Sick Boy. I had to do that on live TV, where a lot of these guys that you even go back to this more in my era with Bret Hart's even and Shawn Michaels, they worked tons of independent shows. And you go and watch any of their early stuff, man, they're pretty raw and like, like, especially with the interview stuff and really molding that character. And you go to even the Scott Halls and Nash's, you go to early stuff and it's like, well, their early stuff, they were doing it on like local, you know, UCF down in Florida and USWA in Memphis and World Class Championship at Wrestling in Texas and stuff like that. And they were on just these local markets where they were cutting their teeth. I was cutting my teeth like many others in front of 20 million people every night on Monday night. And it's like, you know, then because I'll read comments and see stuff from people and they're telling, well, Sick Boy, you know, this or that. And there's some accolades to it, but then there's others that are bashing it. And I'm just like, man, I was 24 years old and I'm thrown out into this in the middle of this mayhem that was the Monday Night Wars. WCW was as hot as I had to learn on the go. And I'm not griping and I'm not patting myself on the back. I'm just saying, have some perspective to stuff, to things before you start you know, a lot of people comment on stuff and it's just not me. There's other guys that are the same way that have kind of gotten thrown out there. And it's like, you know, it's great when you have that opportunity to go to one of these territories and really cut your teeth and learn and watch. I didn't get that. I didn't get to cut promos and then go get videos of them and watch them and go, oh, this is what I really need to work on. It's like I was traveling so much and going, I just didn't have time for a lot of that stuff. But I know I kind of went off on my soapbox there.
No, that's great.
We absolutely love it. Well, once again, I'm going to mirror the sentiment from Tyler. We want to thank you so much, Scott, for coming on the show. We will have to do this again one day because like Tyler said, I don't think we scratched the surface of what we could talk about with you. Such interesting stuff. But until next time, my friends, on behalf of Tyler, we do thank Sick Boy. Scott, thank you so much for being here. Next week, we're back with the list. Tune in, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and we'll see you next week. You have been counted out.